The last time she stood beneath the imperial dome, the stars were arranged to celebrate her obedience. Constellations had shifted themselves into the crest of her bloodline. Choirs tuned their voices to frequencies only her people could fully hear. Every noble house shimmered in ceremonial light, waiting for her to step forward and accept a future already decided. She had listened instead to the silence between the notes. "Daughter," the queen had said, her voice traveling through gravity itself, bending the air into attention. "The empire does not wait." "I know," the princess had answered. She remembered the way the court studied her then, measured breathing, perfectly angled chins, eyes calculating inheritance probabilities. They saw a young woman who looked almost human, dark hair falling over narrow shoulders. Calm expression. What they did not see, what they often pretended not to see, were her ears. Long, elegant, unmistakable. They curved from beneath her hair like silver arcs, sensitive to every fluctuation in the hall's energy grid. She could hear the hum of orbiting dreadnoughts through the marble floor. She could hear the quantum relays whispering across light years. She could also hear her own pulse, steady and stubborn. "I will not take the throne," she had said. The words did not echo. The dome did not allow echoes. The silence that followed was more dangerous than any explosion. One of the admirals actually dropped his ceremonial spear. It clattered across the floor, a sharp, mortal sound in a room that preferred perfection. "You misunderstand," the queen replied gently. "It is not a choice." The princess smiled, and for a brief, reckless second she almost laughed. That is exactly the problem. Hours later, without spectacle, she boarded a diplomatic shuttle. No fleet escorted her. No cannons fired. The empire did not believe in dramatic exits. It believed in inevitability. From orbit, the capital world looked as it always had, ringed in luminous stations, its atmosphere threaded with defense satellites like jewels. She watched it shrink, her ears catching the faintest tremor of the planetary shield recalibrating to her absence. "You'll be back," one of the court aides had told her before departure. "Royal gravity is difficult to escape." She had nodded politely. Royal gravity, it turned out, had never encountered Earth. Earth did not glow in symmetrical perfection. It did not align its continents for aesthetic harmony. It spun, slightly tilted, unapologetic. When her shuttle entered the atmosphere years ago, turbulence shook the hull so violently that the onboard AI asked if she wished to declare a state of existential regret. "Not yet," she had said. She met him in a laboratory that smelled faintly of burned circuits and ambition. He was arguing with a prototype faster-than-light engine, as if it had personally offended him. "You can't just bend space because you're in a mood," he muttered, smacking the console lightly. "That's not how physics works." She tilted her head, listening to the machine's frustrated oscillations. "Actually," she said softly, "it is exactly how physics works. You're just not persuading it correctly." He looked up. Humans were expressive. His face went through confusion, awe, and a very practical assessment of whether she was real in less than a second. "You've got ears," he said brilliantly, "so I've been told." They began with equations. They continued with coffee. He insisted she try what he called the only beverage capable of supporting human civilization. She insisted on recalibrating his energy core to avoid catastrophic implosion. It was, in retrospect, a balanced exchange. Years passed in increments too small for an empire to notice. She learned to navigate grocery stores. She learned that humans debated politics loudly and then shared dessert. She learned that her ears, which could detect solar flares across planetary distances, were exceptionally sensitive to the squeal of subway brakes. "Does that hurt?" he asked once as she winced on a crowded platform. "Only in the sense that it makes me question my life choices." He grinned. "You left an interstellar empire for this." She glanced around at the chaos. The street musician off-key but enthusiastic, the child laughing too loudly, the sky cluttered with commercial drones and possibility. "Yes," she said simply. They built a family the way humans built everything, imperfectly and with optimism bordering on reckless. When their first child was born, the hospital monitors flickered in mild confusion. The baby's ears were small, gently pointed. Not as long as hers, but undeniably different. The nurse blinked. "Is that normal?" "For us," her husband asked, "we're still figuring that out." The child grew quickly, absorbing languages and physics with equal curiosity. The empire remained distant, a memory encoded in her bones, until the message arrived. It came through channels no human satellite could detect, riding on quantum entanglement braided into her DNA. Her ears twitched before the device on the table even activated. Her husband looked up from the kitchen counter, where he was attempting to repair a toaster with tools that were absolutely not designed for kitchen appliances. "That's the look you get when something expensive is about to happen," he said. She didn't answer immediately. The air itself felt different, as if space had cleared its throat. The projection unfolded above the table, scattering spoons and homework assignments with polite force. The Queen appeared, crowned in gravitational light, eyes as sharp as ever. "Daughter," the Queen said. The word carried distance, authority, and something almost like fatigue. "You have been absent," the Queen continued. "The Empire requires your presence." Her husband glanced at the hovering monarch, then at the half-dismantled toaster. "Should I turn this off, or is she going to judge my wiring technique?" The Queen's gaze shifted to him. A pause. "Who is this?" "My husband," the princess replied calmly. "Try not to vaporize him, I'm fond of him." The Queen did not vaporize anyone. The projection flickered slightly, as if the Imperial communication array itself was unsettled. "You left," the Queen said. "Now you return." It was not phrased as a request. The toaster sparked defiantly. Their eldest child peered around the corner. "Is that Grandma from space?" The princess closed her eyes briefly, listening to the faint tremor in her mother's voice, to the distant unrest vibrating along imperial frequencies. "Yes," she said softly, "it is." And for the first time in years, the pull of royal gravity tightened, not as a chain, but as a question. The projection dissolved, but the silence it left behind lingered over the kitchen table like a guest who refused to leave. Her husband stared at the empty air where a galactic monarch had just hovered. "So," he said carefully, "family dinner at your mother's place." She exhaled slowly. Her ears still rang with the residual vibration of the imperial channel. "It's not dinner. Brunch. It's an empire." He nodded as if that clarified everything. "Right, casual empire visit." The toaster sparked again, then died heroically. Their eldest climbed onto a chair. "Are we going to space?" "Yes," the princess said before she could reconsider. The child grinned. "Can I bring my tablet?" Her husband blinked. "We are not introducing your mother to human internet culture on day one." "She should understand us," the princess replied. "She can barely understand why I exist." "That's fair." She moved to the window, looking out at the layered skyline of Earth. Drones traced delivery routes. Traffic hummed. Somewhere above, satellites blinked like nervous stars. Years ago she had left a world where everything aligned in obedient symmetry. Here, nothing aligned, and somehow it worked. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. She turned back to him. "If I don't, she will come here." He considered that. Our neighborhood association is not emotionally prepared for orbital dreadnoughts. A laugh slipped from her despite the tension coiling in her chest. "No, they are not." Her ears twitched again, catching faint ripples in space-time. The Empire was not waiting patiently. Defense grids were shifting. Admirals were arguing. Entire star systems were recalculating political probabilities. "She wouldn't call me back unless something is wrong," she murmured. "Define wrong," he said. "Because on Earth, wrong can mean anything from global crisis to we ran out of coffee. For her, wrong means instability." "Ah," he said, "the scary kind." The children were whispering excitedly in the corner. "Do you think Grandma has lasers?" The younger one asked. "Everyone in her family has lasers," the older replied confidently. She does not have lasers, the princess said. Her husband tilted his head. You absolutely have lasers. That was one time. You vaporized a meteor. It was a small meteor. And we were dating, he said. That was a lot to process. She stepped closer, resting her forehead briefly against his. If we go, it won't be safe. He shrugged lightly. We survived your first attempt at cooking with plasma heat. We'll manage. She smiled. You exaggerate. The smoke alarm disagrees. The decision, once spoken aloud, solidified with surprising calm. They would not go as supplicants. They would not go as prisoners. They would go as family. Preparation began immediately. Her husband descended into his workshop with the intensity of a man personally offended by imperial technology. If we're visiting a civilization that bends gravity for decoration, he muttered, we are not showing up with outdated shielding. He pulled schematics into the air. Human designs meshed with alien equations she recited from memory. Together, they modified the ship parked in orbit, a vessel that had once been experimental and slightly illegal. You're increasing the drive output by 30%, she observed. I'm compensating for your mother's personality, he replied. She leaned over his shoulder. You'll need harmonic dampeners. I know. You forgot them. I was testing you. Of course you were. Upstairs, the children packed with chaotic efficiency. I'm bringing 3 stuffed animals, the younger declared. We're going to an imperial capital, the older protested. You can't bring stuffed animals. Why not? Because what if they scan them? They're plush. They're suspiciously plush. The princess intervened. Bring one each. The younger beamed triumphantly. Night settled over the city. She stood alone for a moment on the rooftop, letting her senses stretch outward. Her ears unfolded slightly, catching whispers beyond the atmosphere. Imperial beacons flickered like distant heartbeats. She could hear tension threaded through them, a discordant rhythm she had not heard in years. You're listening again, her husband said behind her. Yes. Anything good? No. He slipped an arm around her. Then we'll bring something good with us. She leaned into him. You realize they will judge you. They already do, he said cheerfully. I married their princess. A notification chimed from the orbiting ship. Systems online, drive stable, navigation plotted. The children burst onto the rooftop, breathless. When do we leave? She looked once more at the uneven skyline, at the stubborn, beautiful disorder of Earth. Now, she said. Minutes later, they stood within the hangar bay of their ship. The interior lights flickered in greeting. Destination? The onboard AI asked. Her husband glanced at her. You want to say it? She hesitated only a fraction of a second. Imperial capital. There was a pause. That is statistically inadvisable, the AI replied. Noted, her husband said. Plot it anyway. The engines warmed with a low, eager hum. Gravity shifted subtly as the ship detached from orbit. Through the viewport, Earth receded, blue, imperfect, alive. Are we really going to see Grandma? The younger whispered. Yes, she answered. Is she scary? Sometimes. Is she nice? She considered the question carefully. She is learning. The ship pierced the upper atmosphere, stars sharpening into clarity. Her ears caught the moment the drive engaged, the delicate fold of space-time yielding to engineered will. Hold on, her husband called. The children whooped. Reality bent. The stars stretched into luminous threads, then snapped into a corridor of impossible color. Hyperspace unfolded around them like a living equation. Her pulse quickened, not with fear but with recognition. She had traveled these currents as a child under heavy escort. Now she navigated them beside laughter and stuffed animals. Her husband glanced at the sensor readouts. Your Empire's border patrol just noticed us. Are they locking weapons? She asked. Not yet. They will. Good, he said. I tuned the shields. She rolled her eyes. You're enjoying this. A little. Ahead, Imperial space shimmered into view. Defense satellites pivoted. Massive warships adjusted formation. Multiple target locks, the AI announced calmly. The children stared wide-eyed at the tactical display. "Are they going to shoot?" the older asked. "No," she said with quiet certainty. Her genetic signature transmitted automatically, carried in quantum code older than most of the fleet. One by one, the target locks disengaged. Silence spread across the channel. Then a single message arrived, formal and restrained. "Her Highness has entered Imperial space." Her husband exhaled. "Well, that's not ominous at all." She watched the fleet part to allow passage. "They're not sure what I am anymore," she said softly. He reached for her hand. "You're theirs," he said. "And you're ours." The capital system glowed ahead, brilliant and imposing. "Family field trip," he muttered. Her ears caught the distant tremor of the palace itself, waiting. "Yes," she whispered. "Family." The capital world filled the viewport like a patient eye. Her husband leaned forward in his seat. "That's excessive." "It was designed to be," she replied. Orbital rings encircled the planet in perfect geometry, layered with shipyards, defense platforms, and habitats that glowed in deliberate symmetry. Traffic parted before them in widening corridors, guided by invisible algorithms that recognized her genetic clearance. "Multiple scans in progress," the AI announced. "Biological, technological, psychological." "Psychological," her husband repeated. "That feels invasive." "You married into royalty," she said. "Invasive is tradition." Their eldest squinted at the tactical display. "Are those ships aiming at us again?" "Technically," her husband said, studying the readouts, "they're aiming near us. It's a polite aim." The younger pressed their face to the viewport. "I see a big shiny thing." "That," she said quietly, "is the palace." It rose from the planet's primary continent like a controlled singularity wrapped in architecture. Towers curved upward in arcs that defied gravity. Energy fields shimmered along its surface, bending light into halos. The structure was grown as much as built, bioengineered stone threaded with quantum processors. Her ears caught it before the instruments did, the harmonic resonance of the palace's core reactor. It vibrated at a frequency tuned to the royal bloodline. "It recognizes you," her husband said, watching the energy readings shift. "It never stopped," she answered. A formation of Imperial interceptors slid into escort positions around them. Sleek blade-like vessels with hulls that refracted starlight. "Escort pattern Delta 7, the AI observed. "Ceremonial, also mildly threatening." "Comforting," her husband muttered. A transmission opened across the command channel. "Her Highness is cleared for descent. Landing coordinates transmitted." The voice was formal, restrained. No warmth, no hostility. "Still allergic to first names," her husband said. She allowed herself a small smile. "Protocol is safer." The ship angled toward the atmosphere. Fire rippled across the hull as they descended through controlled plasma. Imperial traffic parted in choreographed precision. Inside the cabin, the children bounced in their seats. "Is Grandma watching us?" the younger asked. "Yes," she said, "like right now." "Yes." The younger waved enthusiastically at the ceiling. "Hi." Her husband coughed. "We're going to have to work on diplomatic posture." The ship pierced the cloud layer. The capital city unfolded below in luminous tiers. Structures spiraled upward in measured symmetry, connected by bridges of transparent alloy. Streams of anti-grav vehicles moved in silent lanes. "Show-offs," her husband murmured. The landing platform extended from the palace like an invitation that could also be a trap. Rows of guards stood motionless along its edge, armor gleaming, weapons integrated seamlessly into their forearms. "Heart rates elevated," the AI noted. "That's just excitement," he replied. The ship touched down with a controlled hum. External clamps locked into place. The engines powered down. Silence settled inside the cabin. Her ears rang faintly with the palace's resonance, a familiar chord she had not heard in years. "You don't have to step out first," her husband said softly. "I do." The hatch opened. Atmosphere equalized with a subtle hiss. She stepped onto the platform. The guards did not move, but their weapons tracked micro-adjustments in her family's positions. Their armor reflected her image back at her in fractured angles. Her husband followed, shoulders squared but relaxed in deliberate defiance of intimidation. The children stepped out between them, staring openly at everything. One of the guards' helmets tilted slightly. "Are they staring at us?" The older whispered. "Yes," she replied. "Try not to lick anything." "I wasn't going to." "Good." A figure approached from the far end of the platform, tall, composed, draped in formal command attire. "Princess," the official said, bowing with measured precision. "Commander," she answered. His gaze shifted to her husband. "You have brought civilians." "My family," she corrected. The commander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The Queen awaits." Her husband leaned toward her. "He seems fun." "He once reorganized a planetary defense grid for efficiency," she said quietly. "Ah, definitely fun." They moved toward the palace entrance. The doors parted before them, responding to her proximity with a pulse of light. Inside, the corridor stretched forward in impossible length, its walls alive with embedded constellations that shifted in real time to reflect current imperial territory. The children gasped. "Is that ours?" The younger asked, pointing to a cluster of stars. "It is the Empire S," she replied carefully. The older tilted their head. "It looks like a game map." Her husband nodded. "High-stakes strategy mode." Her ears caught whispers threaded through the walls, court members already assembling, neural networks buzzing with speculation. "Your arrival has triggered elevated activity," the AI whispered through her implant. "I expected as much," she answered internally. They reached the final set of doors, massive, seamless, sealed. "Last chance to fake engine trouble," her husband murmured. She looked at him, at their children, at the reflection of her long ears curving over her shoulders. "No," she said. The doors opened. The imperial hall expanded before them, vast and resonant. Nobles lined the periphery in ceremonial formations, their attire shimmering with embedded energy matrices. Overhead, a controlled star burned within a containment lattice, bathing the chamber in measured radiance. At the far end stood the throne, and upon it the queen. Gravity itself seemed to bow around her. "Daughter," the queen's voice carried without amplification, woven into the fabric of the hall. She walked forward, each step steady. Her husband matched her pace. The children's footsteps echoed faintly against the polished floor. They stopped at the center. For a moment no one spoke. The queen's gaze moved over her, assessing, calculating, then shifted to the human beside her. "This is the one," the queen said. Her husband offered a small, polite nod. "I've heard a lot about you." A ripple moved through the court. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "And these?" "Our children," she said calmly. The younger stepped forward before anyone could stop them. "Hi, Grandma." A collective intake of breath swept the hall. The queen stared down at the child, at the faint point to their ears, at the fearless curiosity in their expression. Silence stretched. Then, almost imperceptibly, the queen descended from the throne. She approached until only a few steps separated them. "You return," the queen said. "I do," she answered. "And you bring change." Her husband cleared his throat lightly. "We brought coffee, too, as a peace offering." Several nobles stiffened in visible confusion. The queen's gaze flicked to him again. "Bold," she observed. "He practices," she replied. The hall remained suspended between tension and disbelief. Her ears picked up the subtle tremor in the palace's core reactor, the shifting neural chatter of millions watching through broadcast links. The Empire was listening. She met her mother's eyes without lowering her own. "I did not come back to kneel," she said evenly. "I came back to speak." The queen studied her for a long, unhurried moment. "Then speak," the queen replied, and the Empire leaned in. The word lingered between them. "Then speak." The court shifted almost imperceptibly. Neural recorders activated. Strategic AIs adjusted predictive models. Millions across the empire tuned into the live quantum broadcast. She did not raise her voice. "You summon me because something is breaking." A murmur rippled through the nobles. The queen's expression remained composed. The outer systems questioned central authority. "They question stagnation," she corrected. A senior counselor stepped forward. "The empire has endured for 12,000 cycles." Her husband leaned slightly toward her. "That's impressive. My laptop barely survives 3 years." She resisted a smile. "Endurance is not the same as evolution," she said calmly. "Outer colonies want representation. They want autonomy in trade. They want relief from military tithe quotas." Another noble spoke sharply. "Without those quotas, the fleet weakens." "The fleet is already stretched thin," she replied. "You're guarding obedience instead of threats." The queen's gaze sharpened. "You presume much for someone who abandoned her post." "I left because I saw this coming," she answered evenly. A subtle tremor moved through the hall as strategic overlays projected data above them. Star maps shimmered into existence. Supply lines glowed. Several flickered in unstable red. Her husband squinted upward. "Those are not decorative, I assume." "No," she said softly. A commander pointed toward a cluster at the galactic rim. "Sector Vierx has refused tribute shipments." "And how did you respond?" she asked. "We dispatched 2 enforcement cruisers." She closed her eyes briefly, and they were delayed. Her ears twitched, catching the micro-fluctuations in the data feed. "Disabled." The commander hesitated. "Disabled," the queen confirmed. A wave of quiet tension swept through the hall. Her husband folded his arms. "Okay, that's bad." The eldest child tugged at her sleeve. "Are they the bad guys?" "No," she whispered. "They're tired." The queen's gaze flickered to the children again, then back to her daughter. "You believe fatigue justifies defiance." "I believe suffocation creates rebellion," she said. A counselor snapped. "The empire is not suffocating." She gestured upward. The star map zoomed inward, highlighting trade inequities, resource imbalances, communication bottlenecks. Data flowed in luminous streams. You tax developing systems at the same rate as core worlds. You restrict technological exchange. You enforce cultural conformity under the guise of unity. "That is tradition," the counselor insisted. Her husband raised a hand politely. "On Earth, we call that a warning sign." Several nobles turned toward him as if noticing gravity had started speaking. The queen's tone cooled slightly. "Human governance is chaotic." "Yes," he agreed immediately. "It's exhausting, but it adapts fast." A ripple of restrained irritation moved through the court. She stepped closer to the projection field, letting her ears fully unfurl. The faint hum of the palace's quantum core intensified in response. "You built this empire on strength," she said, "but strength without flexibility fractures." The queen studied her in silence. "You propose what?" the queen asked at last. "Decentralization," she replied. "Shared governance councils in outer sectors. Flexible trade ratios based on developmental metrics. Integrated cultural exchange programs." A noble gasped. "Integrated." "Yes," she said calmly. "You fear contamination. I see collaboration." Her husband leaned closer. "We could help with the tech-sharing framework." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You assume we require human assistance." "We assume you're losing ships," he replied evenly. The silence sharpened. Above them another sector flared red. "Report," the queen ordered. A tactical projection unfolded midair. An imperial dreadnought drifted powerless near a mining colony. No explosion, no visible assault. "Systems shut down remotely," an officer announced. "Unknown signal pattern." Her ears caught the waveform before the AI decoded it. A layered resonance. Not chaotic, deliberate. "That's not a rebellion attack," she said quietly. "Then what is it?" the queen demanded. "A message." The waveform stabilized, resolving into structured pulses. The hall filled with the translated signal. We demand voice. Not freedom, not war. Voice, the younger child whispered. They just want to talk. The Queen's jaw tightened. They disabled a warship, the commander argued. They could have destroyed it, she replied. They didn't. Her husband nodded slowly. That's restraint. The court shifted again, tension recalibrating. The Queen descended the remaining steps from the throne, standing at equal level with her daughter. You left, the Queen said softly, and yet you claim to understand this empire. I never stopped listening, she answered. A long silence followed, not empty but heavy with calculation. The Queen turned slightly toward the assembled nobles. If we grant councils to outer sectors, what prevents fragmentation? Trust, she said. Several nobles recoiled as if she had suggested abolishing gravity. Her husband cleared his throat. Also oversight committees. Humans love oversight committees. The eldest child added helpfully, and snacks. A few younger officers failed to suppress faint smiles. The Queen's gaze flickered across the hall, measuring reactions. Fear was present, so was curiosity. You would stake your return on this proposal? The Queen asked. Yes. And if you are wrong? She did not hesitate. Then I will stand beside you when the consequences arrive. The Queen studied her daughter's face, the curve of her long ears, the steady resolve in her posture. You bring instability, the Queen said quietly. I bring evolution, she replied. Another alert pulsed overhead. A second outer sector had transmitted the same waveform. We demand voice. The hall felt smaller suddenly. Her husband leaned close to her. Your empire's inbox is filling up. She almost laughed. The Queen inhaled slowly. Open a channel to Sector Vierx, the Queen commanded. Gasps rippled through the nobles. Direct, the commander asked. Direct, the Queen confirmed. The projection shifted. A distant council chamber appeared, representatives from the outer colony staring in disbelief as the imperial hall materialized before them. The Queen stepped forward. You have disabled imperial vessels, the Queen said evenly. You now have my attention. A representative from Vierx swallowed visibly. We did not wish war. Then speak, the Queen said. She felt the shift then, not in the data, not in the palace reactor, but in the current of the empire itself. A pivot point. Her husband exhaled slowly. Well, he murmured, that escalated into diplomacy. She squeezed his hand. The younger child whispered, Grandma is scary but cool. Yes, she said softly. Across the hall, nobles exchanged uncertain glances as outer system voices began to fill the chamber. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was not issuing commands. It was listening. The channel to Sector Vierx remained open. For the first time in imperial history, the Queen did not speak first. The representative from the outer colony stood rigid, clearly expecting interruption, perhaps annihilation. Instead, the Queen said, You demanded voice. You have it. A silence followed that was far more fragile than any battle formation. We cannot sustain current tribute levels, the representative said carefully. Our infrastructure is collapsing under fleet requisitions. You disabled 2 cruisers, the commander interjected sharply. We disabled weapon systems only, the representative replied. We chose restraint. Her ears caught the truth in the waveform of his voice. The Queen glanced at her daughter. Restraint, the princess said softly, is a form of respect. Murmurs spread across the hall. Her husband leaned toward a nearby noble. On Earth, we call this a negotiation. Try not to panic. The noble blinked. Data projections expanded above them, trade routes shifting, resource graphs recalculating in real time. The princess stepped forward, interfacing with the imperial system through the bioresonant link embedded in the palace floor. I am submitting a revised tithe model, she said. Scaled contributions based on output stability and development metrics. Military support adjusted to local threat index rather than fixed quotas. You would weaken central control, a counselor objected. I would strengthen loyalty, she replied. The Queen watched the projections cascade. For centuries she had ruled through certainty. Now uncertainty stood before her wearing long ears and human laughter. "Open advisory channels to 3 additional outer sectors," the Queen ordered. Shock rippled outward. Simultaneously, the commander asked, "Yes." Her husband let out a low whistle. "Bold move." The eldest child tugged at the edge of the holographic display. "If they all talk at once, it'll get messy." The princess smiled faintly. "Then we'll organize it." Hours passed not in shouting, but in exchange. Representatives from distant systems appeared in layered projections. Grievances surfaced. Proposals formed. The Empire's neural network strained under the weight of genuine conversation. At one point, 2 sector governors began arguing over shipping lanes. Her husband stepped closer to the display. "You're both routing through the same corridor because it's fuel efficient. Try alternating cycle windows." They stared at him. He shrugged. "Traffic optimization is universal." The corridor recalculated. Conflict probability dropped. The commander stared at him. "You interfere freely." "I collaborate freely," he corrected. The Queen noticed something subtle in the hall. The nobles were no longer recoiling from human presence. They were listening. When the final advisory channel closed, the palace felt different, not weaker, quieter. The Queen turned to her daughter. "You have altered the axis of the Empire in a single cycle." "I didn't," she replied. "The Empire was already turning." "And you," the Queen asked, "have you returned to claim what you once refused?" The hall stilled. Her ears caught the faint tremor in her own pulse. "No," she said. "I returned to stand beside you, not above you." A flicker of something passed through the Queen's eyes. Not defeat, not relief, recognition. "You left because you believed I would not change," the Queen said. "Yes. And now," she considered carefully, "now I see that even stars adjust their orbit." A faint ripple of restrained amusement moved through the hall. The Queen looked toward the children. "And you?" she asked the eldest. The child straightened. "We think empires should update their systems more often." A few nobles coughed. The younger raised a hand. "And maybe fewer scary ships." The commander stiffened. The Queen's lips curved almost imperceptibly. "We will review ship aesthetics." Her husband exhaled softly. "Progress." The Queen stepped back toward the throne, then paused. "For 12,000 cycles," she said, her voice carrying through every channel, "this empire equated control with strength." The star above them flared gently as if listening. "Today," she continued, "we redefine strength as adaptability." Gasps, then silence. Outer sectors will form regional councils. Tribute models will adjust. Enforcement fleets will be reassigned to defense against external threats only. The commander opened his mouth, then closed it. The Queen's gaze swept the hall. "And Earth will be recognized as a sovereign allied world." Her husband blinked. "That's generous." "It is strategic," the Queen replied. The princess felt something inside her settle. She had left in defiance. She stood now in partnership. The Queen descended once more from the throne platform and stopped before her daughter. "You chose differently," the Queen said quietly. "You built something I did not understand." "I built a family," she answered. "And you brought that understanding here." The Queen inclined her head slightly. "Not a bow, not yet, but close." "You will not take the throne," the Queen said. "No. You will advise it." "Yes." The word carried weight. The Empire adjusted. Days later, the palace corridors no longer hummed with suspicion. They buzzed with reform committees, cross-sector planning groups, and an alarming number of human engineers invited to observe. Her husband stood before a cluster of imperial technicians. No, you can't just intimidate a power core into efficiency. You have to understand it." A technician blinked. "We usually intimidate it." "Try encouragement." The children ran through designated corridors under careful but increasingly relaxed guard supervision. "Grandma," the younger called one afternoon, sliding to a stop before the Queen. "We made a list." "A list," the Queen repeated. "Yes, improvements." The Queen accepted the datapad. At the top was written, Empire 2-0. The queen's shoulders shifted in what might have been laughter. The princess watched from across the chamber, her ears catching the new rhythm of the palace, less rigid, more alive. Her husband joined her. So, he said softly, no regrets. She looked at him, at the star burning steadily above, at her mother reviewing a child's proposal for friendlier uniform colors. No, she said. You've changed it, he said. We've changed it, she corrected. In the weeks that followed, outer sector unrest diminished. Disabled cruisers returned to active duty under revised mandates. Trade stabilized. Advisory councils convened without sabotage. Not perfect, never perfect, but moving. On the day Earth's formal alliance charter was signed, the Queen addressed both worlds. We stand not diminished, she said, but expanded. The princess stood beside her, not as heir, not as exile, but as bridge. Her long ears caught the harmonics of two civilizations beginning to synchronize. That night, in a quieter chamber overlooking the luminous city, the queen approached her daughter alone. You were right, the queen said simply. The princess shook her head gently. We both were. The queen studied her for a long